everybody, and welcome back to the NBA Matchup Report, one show that would never disrespect one of the greatest rappers of all time. And we'll be talking about his city here in a second because we are finally here to talk about the NBA Finals. This is what we lead up to every year, obviously, but you and I have been hyping up these playoffs and having a lot of fun talking or watching them. And now we finally get to the last series of the season before we get towards what I think what is a really fun off season for you and I to talk about. But let's get to it, man. I know you're still recovering, so I'll ask you first. How are you doing? How are you feeling?
Um, you know, there's a lot of crazy
I'm gonna
stuff.
mute myself.
Look, I know you're used to this as a Sixers fan, and this happens a lot earlier for you. But as an OKC fan,
Wait. Hold on, hold on. There's no need to punch down, okay? All
okay,
right.
it more so is like it's a genuine thing of like me like your worst part. Like there's so many worst things that have happened to you as a Sixers fan. So for me to sit here and mope over losing, one game when you're that close to the NBA Finals, it kind of feels wrong.
Okay, but we are both also Eagles fans, so I
Yeah.
get what it means to lose in big games. Although not always, but yeah. Go ahead.
So it just stings more than anything to know you were right there. You had the facilities to beat them. Yes, there's a lot of excuses you could throw out of Jalen Williams not playing, AJ Mitchell not playing. I don't care because this team has been touted as a super team all season. The ability for players to step into the starting lineup and continue the rotation and things just flow smoothly. And when one of your all NBA players just doesn't show up for you in a game seven, there's nothing else you can do but just be like, hey, San Antonio was a better team.
Wow, I was kind of expecting more from you there. That was good. You learned from watching me not to get too emotional about it.
I've had time to like process my emotions. If you would have asked me right after, I was like, I want Chet off my team. And part of me still is kind of leaning that way. There's a lot of off-season stuff that I kind of trust Sam Presti to figure out more than I do. Um,
Mhm.
and yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I remember I texted you through, like a couple times throughout the game because I was like, I bet he's locked in. I was like, I don't want to really bother him too much about like what's happening in the game itself because I'm sure you were just like not even like looking at like anything like that. You were probably
Oh
just
yeah, no.
invested in results. Um, I remember texting you at the very beginning of it was like, hey, this is a good ass game. And then nothing. And then I just texted you after the game, you good. And I got three texts of, no, I hate Chet, I hate Wemby. I was just like, yeah, fair, all fair. Uh, but look, it was a fantastic series, and it was a fantastic end to the series as well. And San Antonio, like there was nothing fluky about it, like you said. Like they completely earned this series win. It was a gritty ass freaking win for them. And you're right with OKC, like there are no excuses, especially like we can't make any excuses for them. Being we are two people who are the entirety of the season starting in October. All we have talked about is the depth of OKC and how important that is to their team and how much of an advantage it is for that team. That you're right, like they could have like a guy who wouldn't like is like 10th in their rotation just come in and start for them, a la Jared McCain, basically a guy they traded for in February who had an amazing game five for them. Like we always talk about, like they have these guys that they can just kind of plug and play, especially as long as you have a guy like SGA out there who they did have all series. Then you're like, okay, everything else will just work around it because the gravity and just the presence of SGA and the threat of him on offense and everything that he does for your team, it allows the whole ecosystem around him to function a lot better. But the problem with that is when you go up against a team like San Antonio, while their bench may not be as good as yours, their starting lineup is, you could say, you probably match them up against it. Well, you can say it now, say officially, you can match them up against anybody in the NBA and they would most likely win. We'll see what New York has to say about that. And we kind of saw what they said about that during the regular season, but we'll get to that. But for OKC, man, and I do like how in their post game, like, and like the kind of like the exit interviews, they weren't making a lot of excuses. They were saying like, we played our best. We're not going to make excuses. Like we had a chance to win this. We could have won this and went to game seven, right? It doesn't go to game seven unless you were really fighting for it. And luckily, unlike last year's game seven, the Western Conference Finals, this wasn't a blowout. That was like my main worry into this game. I was like, please don't be a blowout like it was with
I
Denver.
didn't think it was ever going to be a blowout. And it's funny
Yeah.
because I think the commentators mentioned that either way, like this is going to go down to the wire. And I couldn't agree more. And I think like the way you saw both teams, come out the gate, and it feels like OKC like don't realize they're OKC until after the first media timeout. And then it's always like, oh yeah, like we have all these stars, we have all these elite players, and they come out after the first media timeout, and then they learn how, like they remember how to like get the ball moving, get their shots. And I'll come out and just say like, I look, I when we met last week, I said I wanted to see more from Shea, and I wanted to see more from the entire like Ford rooms as a whole. And I got one half of that, and I'll take that. And the more from Shea. For him to come out in a game 7 and to understand the stakes and to go out there and just like do his best and like genuinely hit some tough shots, like
He had an amazing game.
Yeah, we talked about how San Antonio attacked him to start the series, where it was a constant like all hands on deck. Everyone's rushing him at the moment he touches half court. Like even before that, like send to his way and force other players to make their shots. And it didn't work to start the series because you had players who were stepping up. Jalen Williams, Jared McCain, Cason Wallace had a great game 7. I'll get to him, but they kind of adjusted that and started to play more, like we have to guard everyone because we're seeing that OKC's, role players can knock down these shots. In this game, they did a mix of both of that, and either way, it didn't matter. Shea was finding ways to score. He was finding ways to facilitate still. I look at this and say, like, this is what an MVP should be doing. This is why he was the MVP, and this is why, like, he was so successful during the regular season. And it felt like a small glimpse of that in this game. Then I'll also give a lot of credit to Cason Wallace and Jared McCain the first half too. I think he came out and was like they're like a big contributor in the offensive part. But Cason Wallace down that stretch was giving me a lifeline of being like, this game is not over because he's hitting tough shots. He's playing the defense that you would expect from him. But I was like, why? And this is my issue. And I think his exit interview has kind of like sparked a lot of like, oh, like what's the deal moving forward type of thing. If you give him a starting role and Lu Dort doesn't know his team anymore, I don't think we have any discussion of like where his future is, because to me, like he should have been starting over Lu Dort a long
all
time
season.
all season. And I think we've seen more and more as he talked about it, like his best moments were that he felt this season were being able to have the ball more in his hands and be able to contribute to that first unit a lot more. And I'm like, and I don't blame him for wanting to be frustrated if you're going to keep me as a 6-man role, which to be fair, everyone on OKC is a 6-man the way they come off the bench. But either way, I just think his contributions and his impact goes well beyond that, to the point where he needs to be that first unit for me alongside Shea. And then this is, I think, besides those two, this is where you get to speculation of like, what does the future look like for OKC?
Yeah, let me hear it.
To me, this is a good problem to have. Like, you have a shit ton of draft picks. You have a lot of young, talented players. You can make a lot of deals for them, and you have the options to extend some of your veteran players. Like, to me, I look at this and say, like, whatever they do, I don't think they can go wrong, because we've seen that Sam Presti has found ways to like build the best roster no matter what. And
I thought you were about to suggest. I think you're about to suggest something crazy.
I'm not going to sit here and say that they should trade for Giannis. I'm not going to sit here and say that they should. I'm still on the like. On the Chet things.
I was gonna say, elephant in the room.
Yeah. 4 points in an elimination game for an all NBA player. And my biggest issue, especially late in that game, was like, and the commentator said, I'm literally like sitting there like wanting to scream at the projector, because it's like, all right, Wemby has 5 fouls. Okay. Why is your all NBA forward who's lined up with him not being aggressive and trying to get to the rim on Wemby and at least trying to draw a foul? Like, for all the talk of like, oh, OKC is like, this foul baiting, flopping team. That is the one time I would want you to go and flop. Just get to the rim, draw some contact on Wemby. Wemby's out of the game. You can move forward. And yes, I know Kornet had a great game. He had a great block on Hartenstein in that fourth quarter. I still would much rather take my odds of Luke Kornet on the court than Wembanyama. And I that to me was the issue, where I'm like, all right, like just drive on Wemby before they take him out of the game. They're gonna call timeout and like wind this down a little bit. And I was like, all right, this is Chet's moment to be that guy, and it just never happened. Like and I've seen a lot of people say it, and I couldn't agree more. He genuinely just looked like emasculated on the court, where it was like Wemby literally just made him less of a man, and I literally saw that. Where it was like I like our friend Ramir always talks about, like, when you look into a kicker's eyes, you can see if they're gonna miss a big kick before that. I think if you were to look at Chet's eyes at a moment and be like, he doesn't have it. Like, Wemby is literally emasculating him and going out there and being more physical, being more aggressive, talking shit to him all serious. And it felt like this was an accumulation of like, all right, this is gotten to him. Like, and people are saying, like, I've seen some crazy things like, oh, this is next Ben Simmons. We're not at that point. Like, Chet, for all the failures in Game 7, was still an All-NBA player this year, an All-Defensive player this year, runner-up and Defensive Player of the Year. Like, it solely just feels like a Wimby issue. Like it solely feels like you just like Wimby is in your head, and there's like you just can't stop him. And that's how it felt this series, and that's how it felt like all series. And I think like in that moment, I'll say this as a whole, I think OKC should have been less scared of Wimby and just still attacked him and been aggressive, because I think we saw when Shea attacked him and was able to get him in ISO, it looked good because he was knocking down and getting to his mid-range spots. So I would have wished OKC as a whole would have been more aggressive, but it starts with your All NBA player. But looking like a little bit into like what the future is like, to me, I don't think you need to make any drastic changes right now of sending Chet or sending Jalen Williams out right now for a Giannis. And yes, like it is funny that like they always can just press that big red button and be like, here, we'll send you like 2 of our 20 draft picks and whatever. Like it is what it is. But I think when you look at this team and look at how young this team is and how much room they still have left to grow, like I wouldn't be mad if it was like you, not to say you just run it back entirely, because you will have to make some changes to duck under the apron. But it mostly comes down to like, all right, like you look at the bench and it's like, do you want Isaiah Joe or Aaron Wiggins more? Like this, to me, it's once again, it's a good problem to have when you can look at this roster and say, not only is OKC in a good position where they have a lot of talent and maybe they need to plug and play a couple of holes, and they can do that with 2 draft picks in the first round. And then they also have like the luxury of saying like, all right, like their first round draft pick this year, Thomas Gobert, missed the entire season with a broken foot, and we've seen that like OKC is able to develop their young talent. So for me, I just look at this and say like they're going to be fine, and everyone's saying like trade Chet is like it's really just an initial reaction thing. But with that being said, if there were to be an offer like that, the Godfather offer, if you cannot refuse this, I will say pull the trigger for Chet. Like if that was the case, for me, I still look at this and say Jalen Williams and Shea untouchable. Cason Wallace as well. I'll add him to that list. Is like I think 3 guys that you can move forward, and then Chet. I'm like, if there's an offer good enough, I'll live with trading him.
Yeah, but it's not just as like replacing Chet, because it's at this point OKC needs to focus on building their team towards like we have to beat the Spurs here. Like and this isn't just OKC centric either, but this is every team that's going to look like, do we have anybody on our team that can at least slow down Wemby, like let alone stop him, but like slow him down a little bit, right? And like Chet, theoretically, you could be like, okay, like, and this is also the kind of like the hard part of being a big of that size within the NBA, right? Like you kind of have to make a decision or like go down a certain pathway where it's like, if you stay the way Chet is, like body style and play style wise, you kind of have to give up some form of physicality and some like brute strength that you might have had if you were to go in the gym and bulk up a little bit, because then you want because you want him to tighten his handle, you want him to continue working on his shot, you want him to have that versatility that he has as a big man. But when you have to play him at the 4 basically and have him avoid Wembanyama, when you're sending Hartenstein out there to basically just kind of like try to just be as physical as he can with like however far the rest let you do it, you kind of do have to start looking and being like, okay, next, like, we're most likely gonna have to play these guys again if we want to get to where we want to go. Yeah. What's our next step? Like, how do we make that happen? Because I don't think you can just run it back. So, like, who or what type of player is the archetype for you to get in there to help OKC out? They have, like you said, they have the war chest. Like, they have the biggest war chest in the NBA, and they're still one of the top 3 teams in the NBA, right? We can at least say that. So then it's like, who can come in and help this team? Is it Giannis? Like, even at his age, do you think he's someone who can come in and guard Wemby like that? Like, is that something you're trusting? And then, it's just like, what are the other options even out there? It's like, sure, if we had prime Joel Embiid, we can maybe talk a little bit, but even then, it's like, I really just don't know who you can put out there to do anything against Wemby unless you can find like, and this is my thing too, everyone's kind of looking at like bigs, like what bigs can you get in to help out? Like maybe we replace Chet with a big. I think there needs to be more of like a wing player here that you can also bring in to attack a guy like that.
Like I said, this is a, like, yes, the Thunder cannot blame injuries on this, but missing Jalen Williams is a big reason why OKC lost this series. And I think he does impact and can reduce a lot of the Wemby impact. And I think for him to come in, and yes, I know Wemby had a crazy game 1, but for that to be J-Dub's like first game back after missing all these games in the playoffs, that was like, it was the worst case scenario, and we saw why he was re-injured. But I think like having a player like that, especially who like, it's the length aspect of it for me. Like, yes, like on paper it's like, all right, you're like 6'8", 6'7". His length and his size with his arms is what makes him a lot bigger. And I think that's what I'm really excited for, and seeing a player like Thomas Sobert next year, like being able to get those minutes because he's 6'9", but he has like a wingspan of like 7'6", which is like insane. So like that to me seems like, and yes, I'm gonna put a lot of faith in like saying this rookie who's missed his entire rookie season with a injury is going to come out there and be able to impact and stop Wemby in some fashion. But I just think when you've seen a team like OKC develop players at a very high level, and especially a player like Chet who missed his rookie year in a similar fashion, I think to me it isn't the worst scenario to just say like we're banking on our guys that got us here. We're gonna trust our developmental staff and we'll follow from there.
Yeah. Yeah. Real quick, circling back, because I don't want it to go to the wayside. Circling back to Casey Wallace, I know we've talked about him a little bit already, but like genuinely, like I do think if he had started all season, we would be talking about him like being like top 3 for defensive player of the year. Like if he was getting starter minutes, there'd be no question. Like he already made himself a shit ton of money throughout the playoffs alone, and for his defensive presence that he had during the regular season in limited time. But if he wasn't on such limited time, I think his money would even just be like it'd be astronomical at this point from the value that he showed you as a defender all season long, especially in the playoffs. I think he probably was their best defender. And then on the offensive side as well, for him to show that he could contribute at a high clip in that form as well, is like he was at times like one of my first notes here was like SGA he needed help this game, and you would have expected that to come from a guy like Chet, but since he only took 2 shots, that wasn't going to happen. Oh, by the way, dude, there has been some insane slander against Chet since this game has happened. But like, I mean, I got like Midwest like stay-at-home moms and like grandmas talking about like you only took 2 more shots than me in this game, Chet. What the hell? And it's like, oof. But it's like, yeah, because you talked about him like how they were changing, how they were defending SGA. Part of the reason, to SGA's credit, why they had to start doubling him again in this game was because every time they went one-on-one with him and Champagnie, it was barbecue chicken alert. And Champagnie, as good as he can be as a defender and as good as he is just for the Spurs in general, I mean, that's still SGA. And SGA was cooking him. It felt like every single time it was a one-on-one, it was like, okay, everyone clear out. If they're going to let us do this, just let SGA get a bucket, which he did probably like 9 out of 10 times when he went against Champagnie. So then, yeah, you have to start sending the double, have Wemby help you out on the strong side, and then just hope that whoever the ball gets to eventually, a lot of times it was a Caruso or whoever else it may be, that they'll be able to get the shot up. But Casey Wallace ended up being that guy for them, especially in like the later games in this series. So, I mean, honestly, this is all just a big shout out to Casey Wallace. He made himself a lot of money in these playoffs, and I think he proved that he should be a guy going forward that, like you said, OKC values as like a person that they're gonna have starting for you and as like one of your bigger, more important players going forward for your franchise.
Yeah, it really is tough to like evaluate like what you do moving forward from an OKC side. But once again, this is, I think, a coaching staff and an organization who like I have the ultimate faith in, just because we've seen what they're able to work. And Sam Presti is constantly called the best GM in the NBA. When you look at a trade like Jared McCain, and I know that's more on the Sixers being incompetent, but either way, to me, I really look at this and say like I think they'll be good regardless. You have Shea returning, and I think that to me alone makes you a contender. And we'll see what the rest of the cast looks around him.
Yeah, health, a little bit more support, some players developing still. Like I'm not walking away from this series or the season at all saying like, oh, like OKC, like we thought this was gonna be a dynasty, and it's like they're still gonna be one of the top contending teams in the league for the foreseeable future. It's just we kind of all saw this coming with the Spurs. I think maybe I don't know how many of us thought it was gonna happen this quick, but this was part of the plan that was going forward for OKC. It was like they knew they were gonna have to worry about this. I just think like everyone else, they just kind of got punched in the mouth earlier than they thought.
Yeah.
Real quick though, so before we move on to the finals themselves, so the Spurs, Wemby just dominated Game 6 and 7 in this series, and then Champagnie, they finally got help from him, like offensively, like major help from him in this game with his 3-point shooting, even though he was getting cooked on defense. You got contributions from the guards in general, from obviously Fox and Castle, but then Dylan Harper continues to do what he's been doing all playoffs long, and he's been their best bench player all season. And at times, their bench, a lot of times in this series, especially, was failing them at times. Like Keldon Johnson, I would say for at least 5 of these games was kind of a non-factor at times. But then in Game 7, he's there hitting like timely shots, especially in the second half. That is like when Casey Wallace was hitting those threes, Keldon Johnson was able to answer back, and that was part of the reason why the Spurs were even able to win this game. So when you're getting timely buckets like that, the Spurs were finally able to cut down their turnovers, which, we had Stephon Castle. We were worried he's going to average like 10 turnovers a game with this series, but they were able to cut down on that. You were able to get contributions, a little bit more contributions from your bench, including Luke Cornett, who, like you said, he had that big block. And then your starters were all doing what they normally do or what you expect them to do. And then so now the Spurs are headed to the finals to play the Knicks because credit to Ms. Johnson as well for continuing to make adjustments as the series went along, and it was a lot of fun watching that matchup between him and Dagnall. But yeah, now we get a repeat of the '99 series because the Spurs, man, they came out firing in Game 7 and they just kind of never looked back.
Yeah, I think for San Antonio, everything that needed to go right went right for them. Like you got all the contributions and everything that you needed to happen, and it literally just felt like it was shot after shot. Like I was like, all right,
Yeah.
like OKC gets one. I was like, all right, like this is the moment where you can cut in, and it's a Devin Vassell three, and I'm like, oh, like it was like it was
Ooh.
literally backbreaking, and he was 1 for 6, and I was like, of course it's kept me up in the big moments, and I was just like, this just. It was a team that came out, knew the stakes, knew what they needed to do, and followed through exactly that. You got more contributions from De'Aaron Fox that you did in games then 6, and it didn't really, matter then, but because you still got the win. But I just look at this and say, like, there was just so much that San Antonio did better than OKC, and it mostly came down to the offensive end and just taking advantage more of their shots.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I'll ask you real quick before we move on from OKC. You kind of already talked about what they may need going forward, but with the players that you have in building, what are you looking for them to prove on the most?
Honestly, I think the biggest thing is consistency, and I think as much like this was a crazy season, and I think that's the one thing that I feel like needs to be taken into consideration for them. When you look at this and say like you dealt with so many injuries, whether it was Jalen Williams out for most of the season for you, Shea missing a bunch of games for you, like that middle stretch like before the All Star break in like December to January was like a rough patch of like you're throwing your bench unit in there and. That's why the OKC's bench was getting the love that they were getting because it didn't really matter. They stayed, first in the Western Conference. But like, to me, it is really just this is still a very young team. Yes, they won the championship last year and they have the championship experience. To me, it doesn't just come from just one big run because that essentially, to me, is what that was last season. Like, you need to have more sustained moments like this. And I think even a Game 7 where you see these players like Jared McCain getting his first real playoff experience and a first big playoff moment for him, like these things will matter moving forward more than anything. So as much as I don't want to say like just run it back because I think there needs to be changes made moving forward. But I think the biggest thing moving forward is just confidence. I think it's seeing Alex Caruso run out there and still contribute for you. I think it does a lot for the entirety of that team and being like, all right, like we can all do this as a team. It doesn't matter like what the deal is as long as we just like I'd hate to say the power of friendship, but like it to me it literally at times does feel like this team is boosted by that, and I think it really is just a matter of just getting better together, and I think they will be good moving forward regardless.
Well, yeah. Well, first of all, I thought you were just gonna say get rid of Lou Dort and we'll go from there. But I mean, like, despite what Daryl Morey thinks, team chemistry does really, really matter. I mean, even if you look at the Spurs side, right? Like this beef between Wemby and Chet has felt like it's just like Wemby has like a vendetta against him because of some stuff that happened like years ago. But then when you have Devin Vassell in Chet's face also saying like F this guy and like they're all going at him the same, like they are in sync, they are all playing together. And then you hear the stories off the court about like after the game to get their minds off everything and decompress, Wemby rents out like a movie for them to all to watch. And it was just like now I'm not saying OKC doesn't do stuff like that as well, but like team chemistry does genuinely matter, and usually championship teams when they make it this far, it is because they are well connected on and off the court.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, but still, congratulations to OKC on what was an amazing season. It's never easy to repeat. I mean, to play that many games in one season and win it, the emotional, physical toll, and then for everyone to expect you to do better the next season. Everyone expected the expectations put on OKC this season was beat the regular season wins record and repeat as champions. Like that is lofty and borderline just ridiculous expectations to put on one team in a season after they just won the championship, but OKC almost did it again, right? Like Game 7 in a Western Conference Finals, like that is still a huge accomplishment for a team that was just where they were last year. So, like for like a fan like you, I don't think you should hold your head down. Like obviously it stings in the moment, but this is still a team that's going to be around and relevant for a long time.
Yeah, and it's funny. Like OKC literally just took their approach after this game, being like, "There's no excuses. We're just gonna get better and run it back." And I think to me, like that is like I think the approach they should take. Like this is a team that literally, despite all the adversity they had, was still the number one seed in the Western Conference. Still swept the first two rounds. Like they just ran into a better team at a better time that was hotter.
Hey, it happens. It happens, and I'm looking forward to the rivalry between these two teams for the foreseeable future. It should be great, great hoops for us to talk about going forward.
Yeah.
All right, but speaking of hoops to talk about going forward, we do finally have our finals matchup set. It is the Knicks and the Spurs, and I absolutely cannot wait for this. The Knicks right now are on a generational run. They're on 11 straight wins heading into the finals. They're beating the crap out of everybody. It seems like every elimination game they get into, they're blowing people out by 30 plus points. They're just playing clean basketball. They're shooting the best percentage wise within the NBA throughout these playoffs. They have the best 3-point percentage. They're not turning the ball over a lot. They're getting contributions from their bench. Their starters have, adjusted and changed and evolved and sacrificed throughout these playoffs to make them even better than we thought they were going to be. So it's just, and then they're going to go against the Spurs thing that we just got done talking about, which just took OKC to 7 games. And now it's set up to be a rematch of the in-season tournament championship game, which, wow, Adam Silver's got to be ecstatic about that, because that just leans into more validity and just seriousness when it comes to that in-season tournament now, where you can look at the Pacers, right? They won it last year, and then they make it to the finals and take it to Game 7 against OKC. And then now this year, we had the two teams that were in that game in the finals. So it's Adam Silver's going to be very happy about it, but it just makes it adds to the storyline of these two teams where, I mentioned before, this is a repeat of the 99 series, which was similar timelines with Tim Duncan and Wemby with where they're at now, where you had this like young 22-year-old phenom that's up and coming. And then you have the finals with the Knicks, where it's like, it's kind of all miraculous and you have the whole city behind them. It's that big storyline. So it's not an exact repeat of that 99 series, but there are definitely some parallels there that I'm looking forward to going through. But I mean, before we get into the X's and O's of this, just what are your thoughts on this series?
Okay, I'll get out of my depression hole to say that I need the Knicks to win this game or this series. Yes, it was fun, and yes, I agree that San Antonio was a much better team in the series. I need New York to win this for my personal selfish reason. I can't see Wemby lifting the NBA Finals trophy. But with that being said, it's not just blind hatred. It genuinely is this Knicks team has been really fun to watch this playoffs, and I think for all the constant negative talk that we hear about from sports media about the flopping and just the way the NBA and the direction that it's headed in, you see a team like the Knicks that have kind of went all in. And it actually has kind of worked out for them. I think there's so many times we see these teams that go all in and they kind of fall off just because they don't have the long-term success. And I think that the Warriors were the last team at the 2017 Warriors adding Kevin Durant was the last team I very vividly remember it kind of working for them, going all in. And to be fair, they were adding it to a team that was literally 7-3-9, so it was just a cherry on top, and it's why we all hate Kevin Durant. But either way, we did hate Kevin Durant. Either way, I look at this and say this is going to be an entertaining series that I think is like you said, is the perfect situation for the NBA and Adam Silver, where you can look at this and say we're in a competitive league, and I think that above all else is the thing to come from this, where it's you look at how things were supposed to be this season, and even looking at the Eastern Conference, it was you were ready for the Knicks all season to be this number one team in the Eastern Conference. The void left by Boston, which turned out to not be a void because Boston was still there. And then you see the Knicks come on late, really in the postseason to really find the rhythm that they have now. Both sides of this, from a storytelling perspective and just a momentum, it just makes the most sense for these two teams to collide.
Yeah, and then it's with the Knicks, man. It's following along with the city and how it has reacted to this run that they're on, and now we're all kind of apprehensive about man, if the Knicks win, what is New York going to look like? Because we just saw what Paris looked like after PSG and all of them won.
All right.
What? Oh, I'm sorry. Is that another sore spot for you?
So, real quick side note. I'm an Arsenal fan. Okay, Arsenal won the Premier League. And I was first time in 22 years, it feels good. They're in the Champions League final. That was at noon, the same day as Game 7. So I watched Arsenal. It goes down to penalties. They lose because their star defender, who's been phenomenal for them all season, skies his penalty. Why is he a defender taking a penalty in a crucial Champions League final? I don't know. But they miss it. I was like, all right, stings, but this is a team that like they just won the Premier League. I don't have into too many issues. I just said OKC need to win. Later that night, they need to win. OKC lose, and it was the worst day of me being a sports fan. Like two big finals loss like that. I literally like just I turned my phone off because my brother called me after the Arsenal game, and I was like, all right, whatever. And he's like, oh yeah, like I'll call you back after the OKC lose. And I was like, yeah, sure, okay. And I fully turned my phone off and just like sat back and I was like, I'm not picking it up. I got more texts from people like after like that day, like after those teams losing than I did on my birthday. So I don't want to hear
Can
anything
I say I'm right there with you on that because I have felt that so often. Anytime the Sixers lost in a playoff game, it felt like I got like a million text messages compared to when they won. It was like I would get like one text from my mom being like, "Oh, cool," and then when the Eagles lost the Super Bowl to the Chiefs,
Oh,
brother, I had to churn. I didn't just silence I churned my phone off that night because first of all, I was in the city and it was the most depressing I've ever felt that city be in my life. But then it was also just the amount of text I got from like friends of mine that are 49ers fans, Rams fans, like Cowboys fans, like anybody that could find a way to hate the Eagles were just like reaching out to me. And I was like, great, thanks guys. Appreciate you. Help me out in this moment of me being around these depressed fans. But anyways, it's just a part of sports. It's how it is as fans. But let's get to what our expectations for this series on the court, because I had a lot of notes going this for like just kind of questions I had going into this about like how the teams would play each other. Because I mean, look, the Spurs, like we said, the Knicks are on this generational run, 11 straight, like I said, but also they're rested. Like they are very well rested because they have swept just about everybody except for the Hawks in these playoffs so far. So of course they're going to be more rested. Spurs are coming off like beating what many of us still consider or could still be considered the best team in the league, right? They're riding high, but they're also probably going to be a little bit more tired than the Knicks are. So it's who's going to be able to throw that first punch, I think, and sustain it in the series is going to be matter a lot. Game ones are always really weird, but San Antonio at least gets to have like the home court advantage in this one. I think that's going to be a huge factor for them because if it was game one, the Knicks, like in New York, I would be like, I don't know, man. That feels like just like a guaranteed win for the Knicks in game one. But so, I mean, my initial question, as always, is who is going to match up with who in this game, right? And it's got to start with Wemby. Like, who are the Knicks going to put on Wemby? Because I don't think it's going to be Cat. And my guess is, and my preference, I guess I would say, if I were a Knicks fan, would be OG Anunoby to go on Wemby first. Because, first of all, Wemby or OG is having also his own generational personal playoff run. He has been one of their most consistent players from the beginning, right? Like Mikal and Cat were kind of figuring things out in the beginning. Jalen Brunson was doing his thing, but getting attacked by Atlanta in the beginning. But it's been OG from the very beginning who's been that like consistent player. I mean, obviously Josh Hart and some of the others have contributed, but OG has just been amazing, and he's an amazing defender in his own right. So I think you put him on Wemby, and then you're kind of figuring out like who's on what guards there, right? Because I'm guessing Wemby's going to want to like drop back. So then I don't know, but there's so many questions for this one on who matches up with who. But let me ask you this because if you're putting OG on Wemby, who are you putting on Castle, on Fox? Like, where else are you putting these guys?
so for me, I think this is and like yes, it is partially hatred, but at the same time, from a matchup standpoint and the rotations, I look at this and say New York has a lot of firepower both offensively and defensively, where they can attack things in different ways. Like you can have Mikal Bridges. I don't know if I would do it all series, but and there can be spurts where it's like you can have Mikal maybe match up with Wemby for a little bit, but I think you could even have him match up with a Stephon Castle. I think makes the most sense. Like you can go to OG. I'll go OG Anunoby Wemby. You can have Cat do whatever he wants. And then Mikal Bridges on Stephon Castle. I think for me, like those offensively, I'm looking at those and saying those are the two biggest ones I'm looking at offensively from San Antonio that need to be contained most. It's Wemby and Stephon Castle. And I think De'Aaron Fox, just because of how inconsistent he was, and yes, he was coming off an injury, which is what I'll kind of chalk it up for. But I think for me, Stephon Castle and Wemby should be the two biggest players. If I'm the Knicks, I'm looking at saying like, how do we stop them? Especially, I don't know, like literally, it's the moment the game ended, they were like, all right, we're all on Wemby duty. Like it really does become that as a team. But I think they can match up with him so many different ways. But I think OG Anunoby makes the most sense to me.
Can I say one I want just for sicko reasons? I need Josh Hart and Castle defending each other, just because it's gonna get chippy.
I think that would work, especially in favor of the Knicks, because I think when we saw when OKC was able to get chippy with Stephon Castle as a young player, it seemed like it got to him a little bit. And I think Josh Hart, it doesn't seem like really anything gets to him. It seems like he likes to troll, and especially as an Arsenal fan, he once again decided to troll and make fun of us on X a lot this past weekend. So either way, I look at this and say I think if especially if you're going to try to you're trying to be that like the dogs and try to be aggressive, I don't think you can out aggressive like the Knicks because of the players that they have.
Yeah, yeah. And then the cat thing, I just because he's gonna have to match up with Wemby at some point. I don't know if you do that purposely outright right away, but it's gonna happen at some point. And then at that point, like, do you send help, or are you saying Wemby, like, just don't be Chet, like, try to be as physical as you can and don't foul out, because that is always an issue with Cat in the like early on in games, especially. Like, you don't want him going into half with 3 fouls at the very minimum. So it's like you hope that, like, because you know it's inevitably going to happen, and you hope that he can hold up just a little bit, or at least enough to where it's like help can get there and you can get the ball away from Wemby, because it didn't work that well for OKC in that series. So you're hoping Cat can do a little bit better there and hold up, but then you're probably going to put like a man. See, this is why it's so difficult,
Yeah,
man.
I think for me, if I'm looking at this and saying I think Mitchell Robinson needs to have a big series for them, and I think it's the same way Isaiah Hartenstein need to have a big series against San Antonio. I look at this and say that second, like whatever you do, the second unit of like your big is going to be really important in this, because it's the same way it's like the non-Wimby minutes. I like it's going to be the same way for New York and the non-cat minutes, and what you're trying to do with that. And I think Mitchell Robinson, especially on the defensive end, I don't think it'll be a problem. I think you can have a matchup with Wimby, and he can be aggressive and especially take off some of those early fouls that Cat may get. But at the same time, I do question the like when he's on the court, what you're getting from him offensively. So it's going to be really interesting. Once again, it's a chess matchup, but I think when you like the same way like San Antonio have a lot of different pieces, I think the Knicks have even more moving pieces, and the biggest of all is Jalen Brunson can score on anybody, and I think like whatever like that is we talk about a lot of what's the Knicks need to do for San Antonio. I don't know how San Antonio attacks like Jalen Brunson. Do you say straight up like Stephon Castle is our best on ball defender? You have him be aggressive and physical with a Jalen Brunson who loves to like expect like if you hated the way Shea played and was like especially absorbing Stephon Castle's physicality, you're gonna hate the way Jalen Brunson does the same thing, even to an even more extent of being able to draw fouls, and especially Stephon Castle as a young player, especially still jumps in the air, especially on those pump fakes. So I'm looking at this and saying I don't know if I want Stephon Castle on a Jalen Brunson just because of how he'll be able to take advantage of his physicality and aggression.
Can I ask you for the Spurs? Well, first of all, you said something about Mitch Robinson. I want to get that real quick.
Yeah.
One of my notes on this is Mitchell, like, because he's out there with a broken pinky. Like, shout out to him for continuing to play, by the way. Because at first I was like, are you really not going to play because of pinky? But one of my notes was like, is Mitch just a sacrificial like a Hartenstein role in this game where you're like, you're probably going to get in foul trouble anyway, so we're just going to throw you out there because my guess is you're going to want to stagger the Cat minutes to where you're going to want him out there for the Cornet minutes. So Mitchell Robinson is going to have to play some, I'm guessing, early minutes against Wemby, and then you're just hoping he doesn't get in too much foul trouble early, or they don't go to like hack a Mitch. But like to me, it just feels like he is extremely important in this game for them, if not just to like spell Cat, but also just to throw out there and just be that guy who can be physical against Wemby and try to wear him down, while also still trying to be still to contribute on the other end as well with your physicality. Because I do also think with Mitch Rob, like he likes to hang out in that dunker spot kind of area. He may not be able to do that as much with the way Wemby drops, but it also may affect how Wemby has to defend him when he's out there, because that is a legitimate lob threat that they like to do, especially if they get into early action up high with Brunson and Hart and guys like that. And McKelly even, like, they're going to be looking to throw those lobs to Mitch if he's in the area. So at that point, just kind of reading and reacting to Wemby and how who and when he steps towards you. So that's going to be an interesting one in this. But for the Spurs defense part, I was like, obviously Wemby's going to play the way he plays with covering that whole heat map area. I agree with you. I do think you put Castle on Jalen. And I think the one person that basically gets left off, like the person that's not getting directly guarded because Wemby's in drop, probably ends up being Josh Hart. But the problem for the Spurs is Josh Hart's kind of been hitting his threes these playoffs. So, but this is what they've done in the regular season as well. Like if you watch them, it was Hart being left out there alone to be, they're kind of daring him to make the threes, kind of like how they were doing with Caruso. So, do you think there's any changes there, or do you think they just ride with it and say like we don't believe Josh Hart can keep doing this?
I mean, it seems like, and the Spurs changed their philosophy a little bit as the OKC series adapted, but for the most part, it was we are going to not let, like, Shea is not going to kill us until we need him to, like, have to say, all right, go hit those tough shots, go be aggressive and go, get to your bag. And I think to me, I think they keep that philosophy and say, like, all right, like, we need to see you consistently make this until, and, like, if the Knicks get up, like, early and it's 2-0, I think then we hear philosophy change. But at that point, I don't think you can really do much at that point. So I am interested because the first two games are always the biggest indication of how a series will go. But it really is just because as much as we can say, oh yes, San Antonio has played a lot more games, teams that come off of breaks like this often struggle a little bit. And we saw that from OKC in that first game of the San Antonio series, where it's like you had two sweeps, you had a lot of time. San Antonio played a bit longer, but it didn't really matter because San Antonio was fresher and more aggressive. So to me, it really is. I think San Antonio sticks with their philosophy and says, like, Josh Hart, hit your shots, and we need to see it consistently before they change anything.
Um, Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think the biggest problem for them though will be Cat because they're still running the offense through him, which I expect them to do. He is the best shooting big man in the league still, I think, even though he's been taking less. We talked about how he's taking less because he's been more of this playmaker aspect for them, but the shot is still there, and when he takes it, like he's been playing pretty efficiently. So that's going to be one of the problems for them with Wemby having to make that decision. Is like, do I help up here? Who do you put on Cat initially? Like I've been writing it all down here because I have it as you probably put Castle on Brunson. Do you put Fox on Mikal? Because he's probably going to be mainly hanging out in the corner anyways.
I don't like that size matchup. It's tough from a San Antonio perspective.
Yeah, but then okay, so then you put Vassell or Champagny on Mikal, and then who are you putting on OG and Cat? Because I'm guessing it's Vassell or Champagny on Cat, right? And then then who are you putting on OG? Because OG's been popping off.
Yeah, this is.
I don't mean to put you in Mitch Johnson shoes, but like this is our show, right? This is the matchup show.
Okay.
But it's difficult to know, like, because there's so much cross matching that can happen here as well. Are you going to switch everything? What do you do with Cat if he's still running the offense? Do you put Wemby in less of a drop? Are you telling Wemby to like? I think, and this is my own personal, like, I don't know if this actually happens. I think we may see Wemby play a little bit more man in this series than maybe we have in the past. Partly because of the way the Knicks have been shooting the three, but because of also the threat of Cat.
I think the roster construction of the Knicks is unique opposed to like OKC, so you can't attack them the same way. And I think that might be the trap for San Antonio is attacking the Knicks like they are OKC and losing game one because of that. Because once again, it's those first games are always trap games for both sides because you're constantly figuring out what your matchups are looking like, when certain players need to come in and play impactful minutes for your rotations and everything. Because series to series, it's different. But I look at this from a Knicks perspective and say like we're good with whatever matchup you want to do. Like yes, you can say Jalen Brunson is a liability on the defensive end for you. At the same time, they are, and yes, like I think that may be the issue for the Knicks on the defensive side is that yes, like how do you where do you match Jalen Brunson up because you have a really fast guard in De'Aaron Fox and an even stronger, like if you decide to because they were able to put Dylan Harper in starting minutes for you, like Dylan Harper is just as aggressive in getting to the rim. But I'll say like I'll live with that if Wemby's not scoring. Like if Jalen Brunson at times turns into a cone because of the offensive end and the offensive capabilities that you have, it almost cancels out. You can say, all right, get to the rim, get a two. We're not allowing any threes on the other end. All right, here's Josh Hart in the corner. Here's Mikal Bridges in the corner. Here's Miles, Deuce McBride hitting big shots for you.
Shamit.
And I'm looking right now. And at just the 3-point percentage and stuff, and it's like, all right, Jalen Brunson shooting 35, OG's shooting 48, Cat is shooting 48, Mikal Bridges shooting 34. Josh Hart is the worst shooting one of those, and he's shooting 30%, but he's looked so much better and consistent.
The team overall is 40% in the playoffs.
Yeah, it really is insane. Like with the firepower offensively, the Knicks can kind of attack San Antonio with.
Yeah, and like especially when you have Shamit, who's been playing exceptionally well for them. Like he was already being a good defender for them, but now he's hitting shots for them from deep. McBride found his shot in these playoffs again after he came back. Like he was injured basically at the end of the regular season, so it's been nice to see him continue to get healthier and back into a rhythm as these playoffs have gone along. You'll probably see a little bit more Alvarado this series, I'm guessing, because of the amount of guards they have. Like I expect to see some Alvarado on like Harper minutes would be my guess. So we'll probably see a little bit more. Like I expect the Knicks to go deeper in their bench, and I expect the Spurs to be able to use their bench. Like it wasn't that they weren't going to their bench as much in the last series. It's just they weren't able to use it probably as much as they would have liked because Cornette was just getting destroyed most of that series. So it was kind of like a desperation of like just survive as long as you can so that Wemby can get any kind of rest out there. Keldon Johnson at times just wasn't doing what you needed from off the bench. So Dylan Harper had to step up so much. So it's like, like is that stuff going to continue, or are you going to get more contributions from your bench, which means you can trust them more, meaning they get more minutes, meaning guys like Wemby can get more rest. It's dude. I mean, but that's why we watch this shit, right? Like this is why we love this. Like it's just figuring out who's going to match up with who and who's going to have to make their first adjustment based off of those matchups. Yeah. It's always a fascinating part of these games, and that's what's great about Game 1, right? It's the feeling out process and who can respond first and make those adjustments. It's a great game. It's a great game. I was going to ask you though, biggest X factor for both teams. Can I tell you mine first?
Yeah, go ahead.
So my biggest X factor for New York, I straight up just put OG. Okay. I was going to put Josh Hart, but I put OG simply because he is kind of like their third option on offense. And if there is a way where they're kind of able to control the action that Cat and Brunson are putting together, there is still just OG out there who at times have just been like, all right, we need a bucket. We know you can hit these drives. We know you can hit these threes. Just do something for us to alleviate the pressure. So I put him, and then obviously the defensive side of it as well, because he's probably going to have the bulk of the responsibility when it comes to Wemby. So that's also why I was like X factor. And then for San Antonio, I put Harper. I should have just put Dylan Harper because I do think the bench battles in this are going to be crazy. And if you're going out there and you got Mitch Robb kind of trying to cover everything within the paint, I can't wait to watch Dylan Harper and his layup package attacking Mitchell Robinson because that's not going to stop him from doing it. It's just going to be a fun battle to watch because Dylan Harper is just fearless. But it's also who is going to guard Harper. Like we said, Alvarado. But like if he's going out there with some of the starters, like I want to see this 3-guard lineup with the Spurs out there. Like I want to see the 3 guards and then Vassell and Wemby out there at one point just to see like how do they guard that when you have Castle doing what he does going downhill constantly. The same with Harper. You have the threat of Fox out there, especially late game. It's going to be because I mean Harper. Like I know he's coming off the bench, but he was still getting like 25 plus minutes. Yeah. So that's going to be a crazy adjustment for New York to have to make to worry about him being their best bench player, and then maybe you get something out of Keldon a little bit extra. But yeah, those are my X factors.
I'll start with the Spurs since you finished with them, and I'll say Keldon Johnson. I think he needs to be that 6-man level of the year player that we saw from him in the regular season, and I don't think we've really seen it from him much in the playoffs. And I think this is the perfect time to show up. And naturally, this they always constantly say it. I think it gets a little repetitive at times to say like, oh, like this is the finals, this is where legends are made, this is where big players are stuff. And I as much as it's a stereotype, and you could say this, it is the biggest moment to step things up. And I think Keldon Johnson will have that opportunity. And then on the Knicks, and you said like, oh, you were thinking about Josh Hart. It is Josh Hart for me. I think like when you consider the way San Antonio may attack the Knicks offensively and saying like we have to live with the weakest link on the New York offense scoring, and if he hits his shots, we lost because we're not going to let Jalen Brunson go for 40 a night on us. Yeah. And I think if you're looking at the Knicks offensively, Josh Hart is going to have to be that guy for you where he can contribute on the offensive end while still making that impact that he does on the defensive end.
Yeah, and then I agree. Part of why I agree, like I was also leaning toward Josh Hart is the rebounding. Like he is so important to them when it comes to rebounding. Like if you look at the numbers, San Antonio is slightly better at New York when it comes to rebounding overall, but the offensive rebounding percentage is slightly better for the Knicks on that side. And a large part of that is Josh Hart and the way he crashes the boards and just how good he is at that timing and getting those boards for them, creating those second chance opportunities. So I agree with there. Like he is a huge factor for the Knicks in this in just so many different ways. But yeah, it's like because that was one of my questions. Like who's going to control the boards? The Spurs have been slightly better, but the Knicks are better at with the O board a little bit. And then can the Spurs keep the turnovers down? While they weren't able to cut them down kind of near the end of this OKC series, it was a big problem for them really all playoffs, but especially in the beginning of the OKC series. And then so like, are you going to cut those down? And I'm kind of looking at Castle for that. Can you consistently keep those turnovers down? And why that can be really important in this is because outside of the Raptors, these two teams have let up the least amount of fast break points, but they've also scored the most fast break points at the same time. So, and we saw that against the Cavs. Like the Knicks just killed them. Like I think, and this maybe just be too much shitting on the Cavs, but like it almost felt like the Knicks could have beat the Cavs purely off of fast break points. Like the fact that that actually sounds almost viable, it should tell you a lot about how that series was going. But we know the Knicks can get out and run with the ball, and we know that the Spurs can as well, even if it's just Wemby shooting logo threes. Like we know that they're not afraid to push the ball down and take some early shots. So that'll be a fun one to watch. In this, like, can they slow? Can these two teams slow each other down, especially in transition off those fast break points? And if you cut down the turnovers, that obviously helps out a lot in that category.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I mean, the last one I kind of had to know. No, it was something we already talked about, but just the big men in this game, right? Like, what are you going to get out of Cat and Mitch Robinson, and then what are you going to get mainly out of Cornette this game? And how physical are the bigs with New York going to be with Wemby? Like, how physical are the refs going to allow them to be?
I think like above all else, I think the biggest thing that if I was New York, I'd get from the OKC series was just how they played Wemby and how they were able to push him around, especially early in the series, and what the refs were able to allow. And I think you want to set the tone and get a sense of what that looks like a lot earlier. Like OKC didn't then try the Hartenstein thing until game two. And even by then, like there's still some figuring out process of what the refs are willing to allow. And I didn't think we really saw them be really strict with Wemby and what that looked like until game six, where it's like, all right, like there's just you could go out there and play physical, and we're going to allow San Antonio to be able to match that. So to me, it's going to be interesting to see once again the refs always play a factor just as much as we would love them not to. Just what they're willing to allow. Because I think those big minutes are going to be what you look at in particular and say like how physical can they be.
100% agree. Can't wait to watch how they figure that out, honestly. And especially Mitchell Robinson. Like, I do think, like, he'll be a fun one to watch this series, especially now that he actually is playing. Okay. Anything else you wanted to talk about this real quick before we kind of make some predictions here?
I was going to say just final predictions.
All right. You go first.
Once again, I'll acknowledge the hater in me. I think this is Knicks in 6. I'll stand by that. I think that San Antonio does enough and Wemby does enough a couple games to be Wemby. But I still look at this and say I think you're going to get a Knicks team that is going to come out ready to play. We've seen how they've looked in the past 2 rounds and how confident they're playing. I think this is the time where we see the Knicks finally win another championship. I say Knicks in 6.
I've been going back and forth with this all day. Like, when I tell you, I was at work this morning at 6 a.m. thinking, like, who's winning this series? And then it was, like, 2 minutes before we started the show, and I'm like, who's going to win this series? It's been so hard for me to pick. And the reason I put my head down when you said Knicks in 6, because that was my final. I had the same exact thing. And the only reason I say that is because, first of all, like, have you watched the Knicks this playoffs? Yeah. They've been they've been torching everybody on offense, and their defense has been able to back them up as well. So it feels like it's going to be, and they're so well rested. Like, while there may be some rust game 1, and they're in San Antonio, which is why that's partly why I'm like, because San Antonio has that home court advantage, why I'm saying like Knicks in 6. Because if this was starting in New York, I'd probably be saying Knicks in 5, and that sounds so disrespectful to the Spurs. And I need to make it very clear. I think this Spurs team is sensational. I think they're a top 3 team in the league easily. I think that's proven obviously because they're in the finals. But I just think what the Knicks have been doing these playoffs, how great they've been on offense, how they've been killing everybody, how in sync they are, the adjustments that them and Mike Brown have been making each series as well to continue to evolve what they've been doing with Cat since the Atlanta series. And just the threat that they have of everybody on that team being able to shoot and how difficult it's going to be for the Spurs to guard them. I'm leaning towards the Knicks in 6, just like you. I really am. And which sucks because if we need, like, we're going to need like a hot button or something, or like a graphic that says like bias alert. I'm going to tell you right now, my bias is I fucking hate the Knicks. I really do. I'm a Sixers fan. I like through and through. They swept us. It's been a back and forth for the previous years in the playoffs. They've given me plenty of heartbreak. This year was like, it just kind of like, it felt like rude. Like, I wasn't as much angry at them. It was just more of like, all right, you didn't have to sweep us. Like, you could have like, made it a little fun. But, it was more in the previous years with like the Dante DiVincenzo shots and shit like that. So, yeah, as much as I don't like the Knicks, I fully respect their team and the talent that they have in that arena. And I do think they come out on the other side of this winning, and, God help the city of New York after that. But we'll see what happens. So, damn, we both really picked Knicks in 6. All right, we're both either gonna look like geniuses or fucking idiots.
Yeah, it's gonna be really interesting.
Let me make sure I
At
make
the end of the day, it'll
that.
be a lot of fun, and even the matchups, like even if they end up both blowouts, like or the games end up blowouts, like it'll be because of the matchups and how they took place.
Yeah, 100%, and that's why we do this show. All right, so we said Knicks in 6, both of us. God damn it. Anything else we need to predict or talk about before we wrap up the show?
Unrelated to NBA, but Drake London just got paid.
Did
He now is the third highest receiver behind Jackson Fifth and Jigba and Jamar Chase. He 4 years, 141 million. This obviously unrelated to the NBA. Puka Nacua just gets more and more expensive, and if they're doing the like, he's out of whatever help the Rams were able to get him, and the Rams were their own thing, and what that looks like. If you wanted a damper to be like the Rams look unstoppable, the contract situation of what Puka Nacua is going to get paid may make you feel a little bit better about the Rams not being able to afford him.
Yeah, but because of the rehab and the dumb shit that he was doing off the field, I feel like that helps the Rams. So we could be like, "Hey, man, we literally had to put you in rehab. So, like, yeah, you want this long-term contract? Let's see you be, I still don't exactly understand what the rehab was for. I didn't really look into it too much. I feel like it was maybe more of just like a, hey, get your shit together. But like the fact that they had to do that, I feel like when an agent comes to your team, talk about like, well, he does all this, so then I can point at it. Well, he's also biting girls and saying, like slurs off the field. So what are we talking about with this guaranteed money? So I think that will hurt Puka in the end. As generationally talented as he has been on the field, his off the field antics are gonna fuck up the money. And then we'll do a football show soon here because we've been hinting at the June 1st deadline and everything that might happen there. There was one trade that happened that I wasn't fully expecting, but hey, there was also one that happened that we've all been expecting that has been just as annoying since it happened as we all anticipated. So we'll see. But we'll be back with some NFL talk soon.
Yeah.
All right. Well, in the meantime, thank you everybody for listening to the NBA Matchup Report. I've been Ty. That's Jay. Really appreciate all the views and interactions that we get from all of you. Please keep that up. We love building this channel with y'all. And we'll see you again soon later this week as we continue to talk about the W and everything going on in that league with players arguing with their coaches and whatnot. So we'll see you all again soon. Thank you for listening.